We now move to the third of the 60-second questions. We will begin the question with Mrs. Dunbar. You'll be the starting point. The question is, what is your position on term limits?
Well, I've made that abundantly clear. I've stated that if I'm elected to this position, I will only seek 3 terms to run, which would be 6 years. You have me for 6 years to go up there and fight as hard as I can to pull in the government to where it should be within the enumerated powers. And I also believe that 85% of America wants term limits, and we got it passed with the 22nd Amendment against Article 2. There's no reason we couldn't do it with Article 1. The only reason we can't is because we are filled with career politicians who want to sit up there and make themselves fat and happy, and I intend to go up there and put on the floor a constitutional amendment to get term limits passed.
We've been talking about term limits for a long time. Folks, I believe that term limits fall on you, as it is currently written. I believe it is your responsibility to make a determination whether or not someone stays in office or doesn't stay in office. And any individual right now, when term limits are not affecting everybody, that means they essentially, after whether it's 6 years or 4 years or 10 years, may be taking themselves and our district and Virginia out of leadership positions that could bring jobs and economic opportunities to Virginia.
Well, the question has only 2 angles. Either you choose a person out, or we pass a law that stops us from running forever. So I have very little to say about that. But reasonably, we should also add to that. That would be reasonable. We should add a term limit on how long they can create a budget. That would be reasonable. So there's not a congressman that is there, passes a law that will budget something for 15 years, but is out of there long before that, and is selling the future of our children. So I believe that if you want somebody to have a term limit, vote him off as soon as you get tired of it. That would be the best way.
So I'm a supporter of anything that gives more power back to the people. And in my personal belief, I do believe that term limits allow that to happen. I don't know if there's a right answer on what that would be. I have also publicly stated that you only serve a certain amount of time if elected. But again, that's up to the people. Just my biggest issue and why I'm such a big supporter of term limits is because we somehow have created a system that allows for career politicians to serve 20, 30, 40 years, and that's my issue with it. I want every single person sitting at this table to be able to have the honor to serve you, the people, and if one of us gets elected and we stay in office for 20 years, we're not all going to be able to do that. Just saying. I know. The room was getting a little stiff now, sorry. But in all seriousness, and as a political science major, I can assure you that beating an incumbent can almost be impossible because of the system that we have created. So I think we need to take the time and look at that system and what that looks like so people actually have the chance to run against an incumbent and we don't have to wait for somebody necessarily just retired to run for office. Thank you.
I want to tell you that the 8 of us running here have formed wonderful friendships, and these kind of digs are no problem at all. This is a poster from the Wall Street Journal this week. It shows where we stand with our spending in this country. The red line is entitlements, Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. This is the problem. This is the symptom. The disease is that we have too many politicians in the saddle for too long. We're not getting good ideas to Washington. Okay, even an old guy like me can figure this out. On my webpage, it says I believe in term limits. 3 terms for a congressman, 2 for a senator. Thank you. Thanks, Mom.
I believe the best system of government is where the power lies with the people. And I believe that the best way of determining who represents you is for the people to decide. When you place limits on the ability of the people to decide, you place limits on who can represent you and take your ideas to Washington or to Richmond respectively. So I'm proud of my record. I'm proud that after 8 years I became chairman of the Conservative Caucus, and this year I became chairman of the Militia, Police, and Public Safety Committee because I know how important Second Amendment rights are to the people of this area. And only I have been fighting every year, tooth and nail, to protect those Second Amendment rights. And if you want somebody who has the experience and the passion, then you will elect me to be your representative in Washington. And that's because I have that experience and I can put that experience to work for you. I don't need time getting up to speed on how Washington is going to work because I've been working in Richmond and I know how to get legislation passed to protect your rights and secure those liberties. Thank you.
I'm going to side with you all, and I'm going to have to answer this question as a voter and not as a candidate. This is actually a hard one. So on one hand, do I think it's ridiculous that we've got congressmen and women that have been there so long they forgot what they had for breakfast and they're still voting on budgets? Yeah, I think that's completely ridiculous. Do I think term limit solves the problem? I don't know. As a voter, if I had to term limit out somebody that I liked and there's an idiot behind them that I was forced to vote for, I don't know how I'd like that as an American. I'll tell you one thing, though, that we do need to get after, and that's the money. I think everybody should be primary. I think if there's 8 of us up here, how many of you, how many people in the district might be better than any of the 8 of us for this particular seat? And they're not coming up here because they say, gosh, it's going to be expensive, or there are XYZ factions in the district that are going to hold me down. So if we want to talk term limits, we can't do that without talking money. So let's put both on the table and make us answer the question. Thank you.
All right, you all feel warmed up? We're going to change the game a little bit. Questions are no longer softball, they're hardball. We'll begin the next question. Chaz Haywood will be the first to answer. This is a 90-second question, and from here on out, it's going to be 90 seconds. Is there a problem?
No, I'm still
Okay, move on. Okay, here's the 90-second question, Chaz. In light of the terrible Florida school shooting, what is your position for a solution going forward?
Steve's been telling me that he has questions he's preparing for me. Thank you. So the school shooting. Who isn't sad? Who doesn't have kids in schools? Who doesn't have grandkids in schools? Look in the back of the room, and my youngest daughter, Faith, is a sophomore, Harrisonburg High School. I know those many nights, like many of you, when these things happen, we grab our kids, grab our loved ones, and we hug them just a little bit more and a little bit longer. Problem is sometimes that we forget about those things. We move on because that's what this world tells us we have to do. So when it comes to these shootings, look, folks, I believe mental health care has been overlooked. We talk about it, and we talk about it, and we talk about it. But we also, folks, need to remember that not every bad thing happens because of mental health care. There are some people out there who are just not good people. So we can't target it just about a mental health weakness every single time. But we do have to look at opportunities to make our schools safer. Through training, through encouraging our communities to, if you see it, say something about it and do something about it, and not be afraid to do that.
As Mr. Haywood said, it is a sad thing, and I really hope for the families to be able to find comfort in the fact that we will do our best, and as a society, we will do our best to prevent this from happening again and having such an horrible incident occur. But to prevent that, removing the firearms out of people is not going to be the solution. It might look like a solution in desperation, but it wouldn't be. Removing butter from your fridge is not going to stop you from getting fat either. It's a bad idea in itself. So we need to think of solutions that will benefit all of us, but without affecting our constitutional rights. And that is not an easy task. At the moment, the only thing I could have thought of, and I was talking with the policemen that go to the same gym I go, and I said, like, what if they create a program that everybody that buys a firearm has to go to a 2-day training in a group, and then the group can determine who is mentally sane and who isn't. And the cop said, like, yeah, so you think nobody can fake being mentally sane? Anybody can fake it. And then they're going to go out and still kill. Because as he said, there's always someone that is evil and there's no way we can stop. But the best way to stop them would be defending ourselves. We have to create schools that are better designed so nobody can get in while the kids are in there. We have to create schools that are protected, and kids are protected inside the school, so the government can only shoot in the hallway. We have to design things around the violence that we unfortunately have to survive and live with because it's existing around us. Thank you.
You're right, no more fun questions. Thank you. You know, one of the things I found most alarming after the school shooting was that I felt like, for me personally as an individual, I was criticized for just taking a moment to think about the victims and their families. And I asked everybody I knew to pray for them, and apparently that was wrong. So I think that kind of shed some light on the world that we're living in. We weren't even allowed to take a few minutes to pray for those families who lost their children, and instead it became a political agenda, and we all of a sudden had to have that pushed down our throats immediately. And I think that should really enlighten us as to what kind of state our society as a whole is in. And I find that is something we need to address first. I also strongly believe that we've got to, as a community, and this comes from local, state, all around this country, this stuff starts at home. We've got to take better care of our children. We need parents that are disciplining their children, that take care of their children, and can teach them right from wrong. And you're right, you know, there's always going to be evil in this world, and it's an unfortunate thing, but we as a society have allowed so many things to happen without thinking about what those consequences are going to be for us. And I'm a firm believer that these things happen or can really be changed at home. The parents have to take some responsibility for their children and teach them right from wrong. You know, my sister is a teacher, and I call. Did you give me my phone? Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm done. I'd like to talk to you more about that afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. It's an excellent question. In 2016, after the San Bernardino shooting, I wrote an article for the Daily News Record in Harrisonburg, Virginia. I brought copies of the articles with me today. In summary, when you have a tough question in this business, you should look back to the rules. A militia is the first thing it says in the Second Amendment, right? A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. Where's the militia? I would propose that we form a national militia. Once a quarter, men and women who want to have the right to carry long arms and these dangerous arms voluntarily go and get training. We can train them on safety, on training on accuracy and marksmanship, but we can also do something else. We can give them a piece of paper and says, please fill this out for your participation with us. And it's a psychological survey. Have you been divorced? Did you lose your job? Are you suffering from some other problem? We did this in the reserves all the time. If you score high enough on the form, you go talk to the mental health worker. We need better organization. In Israel, they have armed guards in the schools, and the armed guards confront people coming into the school. Thank you. They see, and they're part of what's happening with the kids. We guard our money in this country better than we guard our children, and that's a crime. I'd like to change that. Thank you.
So here we go again, where we have a tragedy occur in this country, and the liberal left immediately jumps to gun control, to want to take your firearms, to want to effectively repeal the Second Amendment. That is not over the top to say that the left would love to repeal the Second Amendment. Who is the militia? You're the militia. You're the militia. You're the militia. I'm the militia. Americans are the militia. They were not a separate entity back when this nation was founded. And they were citizens who came together in defense of the nation. And that's what we protected in the Second Amendment, to ensure that we have the ability to defend ourselves using firearms. And not just a musket, but a weapon that is capable of defending us against tyranny and protect us in our daily lives. It's about protecting our freedoms and our ability to live our lives freely. And sometimes you need weapons to protect yourself. I'm wearing my NRA pin because there's an effort out there to boycott and defund the NRA by the left. It's popping up now. I say the NRA is a civil liberties organization, and they are defending your constitutional rights, and I continue to support them, and I'll continue to fight for them in Washington. Amen.
I'm not established enough to have an NRA pin or get money from the NRA, so I don't have to answer that question yet. I'd like to know what the hell's going on with my generation. I was in high school during Columbine, and if I want to give you all a real, honest, heartfelt answer to this question, I have to reflect on people my age. What makes a man my age walk into a school with a gun, any gun, with the intention of taking lives? So I'm a healthcare professional. I work in healthcare. I know there's a mental health angle to this, but I like Chaz's point that it's not enough. You know, when you think about what we did for terrorism after 9/11, the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, not working together and sharing information, solved that problem. If we could get together with school administrators, healthcare professionals, and law enforcement, where an individual getting kicked out of school triggers an event with a medical professional, and then they can corroborate with law enforcement and say, hey, you know what, we got called to this kid's house 39 times. Maybe they could work together to do something I think would be important, and that's opened up a conversation about who should be allowed to own firearms. Let's take the guns and put them to the side. Because that gun, if I put it on the table, by itself alone, I know exactly what it's going to do. Nothing. It's not until you put it in the hand of a person who is unpredictable that this turns into the scenario that we're talking about today. But I want to talk about real solutions because I've got two nieces and I've got a nephew, and I need to look at my sister in the face, and I got to know that kids are safe. So should we put guards in front of schools? Absolutely. Should we arm teachers? No. If I can bring a Democrat to the table to talk about real solutions by discussing firearms in this country as a whole, will I do it? Yes. But come talk to me with facts, and don't come talk to me with signal value. Thank you.
So the problem is not a problem of guns, it's a problem of the heart. And as the only one who has sat up here that has held a high elected official, twice the size of a congressional district, and making policy that impacted nationally, I can tell you where most of this starts. We live in a society where evil is called good and good is called evil, and everyone wants to turn a blind eye. Our founding fathers told us that our government was inadequate to govern anything other than a moral and religious people. They were advocates of self-governance. And I can also tell you that when we are utilizing our tax dollars to effectively indoctrinate the next generation of children, 88 to 90% teaching them the principles of secularism, that they have to leave their faith at the door, we have an epidemic problem with education, which is why I've advocated since 2010 the abolishing of the Department of Education and giving back control to the parents.